up, mamas? Thank you so much for being here with us. We have here Kara Murri. She's the founder of the website and podcast Today I Am Enough. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, that you are enough. Kara, thank you so much for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
First and foremost, how many kids do you have?
I am a mom of 6 kids. They're 7 years apart. My oldest is 15 and my youngest is 8.
Oh my goodness. Kara and I were just talking about how she was pregnant all through her 20s. And you hated being pregnant, and yet you did it 6 times. How did you do that?
I did. I don't know. I just did it. I don't know. And I'm grateful I could become pregnant. I know I really didn't have many complications. My biggest complication was with my last baby, and it wasn't even that big of a deal. So I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't something that I loved, but I'm grateful that I was able to be pregnant 6 times.
I love that. I feel like few women really enjoy being pregnant. Some really do, but I feel like that's a rare thing. So good for you for going through that 6 times. I think that's fantastic. Okay, let's get right into it. So when I was looking through your website, listening to your podcast and things, you talk about how the most important words you say all day are to yourself. Why is that?
Oh, we say, you guys, we're really mean to ourselves. Do you ever really stop and think about the words that you're saying in your own head? They're not usually words that you would ever say out loud to yourself or out loud to other people. But we so freely say them to ourselves. We knock ourselves down constantly, and that doesn't help. It doesn't help our mindset. It doesn't help our self-love. It doesn't help our self-confidence. It doesn't help our mothering. It doesn't help our kids. It does nothing but degrade us. And so when we can learn to change that, and the first step to that is noticing that when you're being unkind to yourself. And if you can learn when you're being unkind to yourself, that's when you just need to catch yourself and flip it and be like, you know what? I'm not the worst mom. There are probably moms worse than you. The reality, right? Most of the things we degrade ourselves about are just things that are silly and we wish we were perfect at, but that's never going to happen either. So when we can learn to accept our imperfection and just be kind to ourselves and say, okay, well, I made this mistake and I didn't do it as well as I should have, or I should have, done this differently. And then just try and change it. Just try and be kinder to yourself about it. Be forgiving like you would to your kids when they make a mistake, or your spouse or your friend, just be kinder and it will totally change your life.
I love that, because I think every single one of us does that. And you mentioned one of the tips is just noticing it first and foremost, but what are some other ways that we can improve the way we talk about ourselves?
Oh, one of my favorite exercises to have women do, especially, is stand in front of a mirror and look into your own eyes, which we often don't do. We often look in a mirror and we admire our hair, look at our clothes or whatever, our makeup, right? But just stop in front of a mirror and look into your own eyes. And I've done it where I've been speaking at an event and I've had someone come up and do this and ask them to say the first 5 or 10 things that come to their mind. And 90% of the time they will be negative. And then we talk about that for a minute and then look at yourself in the eyes and say the first 5 to 10 things that come to your mind that are positive. And it takes a lot longer, so much longer for someone to think of the good things about themselves. But I think practicing that and looking at yourself in the mirror and finding at least one good thought every time you're in the mirror, just look at yourself in the eyes and say, I'm a really great person, or I'm beautiful, or I'm a kind friend. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be physical just because you're looking in the mirror. But just finding those good things about yourself, I think, is a really good way to start having your mind see yourself as a better person.
I love that. And that, like you said, that can be really hard to do. And some people try and do it because they're trying to be humble, but I think it's an important thing to recognize about yourself for your own self-confidence. And that ties into everything you do, your parenting, how you are with your spouse. And I think that ties into everything. So I think that's wonderful advice. Something that's hard for us women, I think especially, is when we're on social media and we see what we think is the perfect mom or the perfect woman. And we all know that perfection doesn't exist, right? And so how do you overcome the drive for perfection in yourself?
Oh, this has been something I've had to work on a lot. I am very much a perfectionist and a little bit OCD. And having 6 kids that are 7 years apart, like when I had my sixth baby, my oldest was in second grade. So I had a second grader, a kindergartner, a preschooler, and then 3 babies.
Oh
And
my gosh.
perfectionism is not possible with that situation at all. And I think we need to realize that perfectionism is made up. It's nothing that we're ever going to achieve. And it's just something we can strive for. We can strive to be better, but we don't actually need to strive to be perfect. And I think when we think everyone else is perfect, that's like where comparison comes in, right? Like, oh, she's so much better. But the grass is always greener. But when you go over the fence, the grass is not as green as you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we really just have to remember that perfectionism is totally unreachable and it's actually damaging to us. And accepting our situations and our reality as they are is actually really, really empowering to ourselves mentally and emotionally. And just accepting that messy and the non-beautiful parts and the beautiful moments even of our lives, the way that they come to us, will help us more readily accept the messy and unbeautiful parts of other people's lives too. And so we're not going to see everyone perfectly. We can start to see their messy parts of their lives, and we're more accepting of ourselves and them when we're willing to accept that non-perfectionism.
I think that's so true. Non-perfect. No, that's perfect.
Non-perfectionism.
I think that's the right word. No, I love that you said that. And you said you yourself, you're a perfectionist, you're a little bit OCD. So do you feel like, is it just a matter of mentally letting go, being like, it's okay that this is a little messy, how, because that can be really hard to do, to let go of that. So how did you do that?
Oh, it's obviously it's going to be work in progress for the rest of my life, I think. And I don't know that I did it very well when my kids were really little. I had a hard time. Like I really do need like my house to be tidy or it gives me a lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And they could never do it right. Like, like you sort the basket so the toys are in the right basket and you label them. But of course they're like 3 and they can barely read and they just don't care. They want to watch the show. So they just throw everything away, like throw everything in the bins, not away. But I think it's little things like that, being like, it's okay. They did their best. They did what I asked. It wasn't perfect. And I can organize it another day when it's driving me so crazy. I think it was probably after my 5th baby that I was talking to a friend and she's like, I realized like I always have to let go of something when I get a new baby. And I was like, did I do that? And I was like, yeah, I totally, like that standard that I had, something had to go. And I'm pretty sure by the time I had my 4th or 5th, it was my kids' hair. Like, oh, well, their hair is not cute. It's not even combed. It's not even brushed, whatever. Like we've got clothes on, we've got shoes on. We made it out the door in one piece. Like, something's got to give somewhere. And so you get to decide what gives, but something has to give and it shouldn't be your sanity. And so it has to be something that you can live with. And now like doesn't even matter, right? Like my youngest is 8 and my daughter above her is 10. And sometimes their hair gets done, but hopefully it gets brushed before they leave the house. And then my teenage boys will not comb their hair for the life of me. They just want to wear hats because their school allows it. And so something's got to give, And so my oldest son is known at his school for wearing a fedora every day, you guys. Every day.
And you love it.
He has like 12. He has like 12. He has 10, maybe. I don't know. He has too many.
Oh my gosh.
Whatever. I just have to say whatever and be okay with it. It is what it is. And it's not anything that is life-threatening, right? Like it's not hurting him. And so you just have to let go. If it's something that doesn't matter, sometimes we just need to say, I have to be okay with this not happening the way I want it to. And on Sundays, he combs his hair.
Hey, way to go. At least one out of the 7
I
days.
know,
That's all you
right?
can ask for.
Yeah, it's
No,
always fun.
you mentioned that sometimes we sacrifice our sanity. Well, you said that we shouldn't, but sometimes we honestly do. And
We do.
I feel like there are so many moms who are overwhelmed, and you understand that. You have 6 children of your own. So what is your best advice for an overwhelmed mom?
It's so easy to be overwhelmed. And I think it comes because we're sacrificing ourselves, right? Like we need the house to be perfect. We need the house to be cleaned up. We need the kids to look perfect. It needs to be Pinterest perfect life. You know, we wouldn't want anyone to show up at our house, or we wouldn't want to take any pictures if it wasn't perfect. And you just have to let it go. Like you really just have to let it go. But I think the first thing that we have to do is learn to be kind to ourselves. It really comes back to being kind to ourselves, because when we're kind to ourselves, we're willing to give ourselves a little bit of self-care, which means we're not going to sacrifice that sanity, or the full sanity at least. I think as moms, we're always feeling a little bit crazy and a
Mm-hmm.
little bit overwhelmed. But I remember when my kids were really little, I would just sit, I would have like a U-shaped kitchen, and I would just sit in the kitchen. And sometimes I would just cry, or I'd close the pantry door. I'd come up to my kitchen, my closet, and I would just sit and cry. I was just like, I can't do this. There's too many of them. They're too demanding. Like they all want me. All I've heard all day is mom, 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 mom. And that gets really overwhelming. And so sometimes your sanity just needs to be like closing the pantry door, standing in front of it so no one can bother you, and eating the chocolate that you hid in there, or going up to your closet where you've hidden chocolate or something, right? Like I think we just need to find something in it. And your self-care doesn't have to look like what you think it should. I have a friend that was like, well, everyone talks about self-care and they're like, oh, just take a bubble bath. And she's like, I don't even like taking bubble baths. So don't. Like if
Yeah.
that's not what you love, don't do it. If you love sitting in front of Netflix, then find time to sit in front of Netflix. If you love to draw or paint or whatever it is, and I know it's really, really difficult with little kids to do that. But even if you wake up like 10 minutes, try. Kids wake up at all random hours of the day, of course. So you can't really predict necessarily when little kids are going to wake up. But trying, like maybe if they watch a show for 30 minutes, let them watch TV sometimes. It's okay if your kids watch TV sometimes.
Yeah.
And do something for yourself. Let the dishes sit in the sink for just a minute and just breathe. Even if you take a breath and set a timer, 15 minutes, do Instagram for 15 minutes or whatever you like to do. Like mind numb for a few minutes, but set a timer, because there's time sucking if you're not aware
Yeah.
of what's going on. But I think it's also important to remember the things that you do matter. Like the laundry matters. When I'm doing laundry for 8 people, which I'm not anymore because my kids grew up and they do their own laundry, and it's magical. It'll happen someday.
Congratulations.
It will happen someday, I promise. But until then, because it seems really far away right now, until then, I think it's important to remember like laundry is seemingly unimportant, meaningless work sometimes, but your kids need clothes. And dinner matters because people need to eat, even though it seems meaningless and nobody wants to eat it ever. Wiping up spills in the kitchen has meaning too. You're teaching your kids to tidy up the house. You're keeping your house a little bit more tidy than it was 30 seconds ago before the sippy cup fell all over the floor, right? And so I think those little things that maybe we hate to do, those jobs that we have to do around the house to just like keep our house functioning, that was always really hard. Like dinner and laundry are not my favorite things even now, but they're a service that we're rendering to our family. But we still need to make sure that we're taking moments out of those service opportunities that are just ingrained in the household to love ourselves and spend a little bit of time with ourselves. Or if you're like cuddled up on the couch with your kids and that's what you love and you love to just sit and read a book with them, just find something that fills you for just 5 or 10 minutes. And I think as we do that, that overwhelm just kind of releases just a little bit.
Everything you said is so relatable. It is so nice to hear that, and I think that is such good advice. If I had $1 for every time I just sat and cried, and I'm sure that's a
And
lot
that's
of
totally
moms.
okay.
It
Yeah.
it gets so overwhelming, and you're like, I don't even know what to do anymore. So I love that you say it's okay to set a timer. Obviously, don't let it suck all your time, but it's okay to indulge in something once a day
Absolutely. And I
and do
think
something
it's
for
not
yourself.
selfish. Self-care is not selfish. Just like you let your kids take care of themselves and you want them to bathe and read and do all the things they need to do, you need to let yourself do those same things also. It's just as important. And it's hard because as women, especially, we're like, oh, that's so selfish if I want to do anything for myself. But self-care is never selfish. It
Mm,
never is. I mean, I guess
so
it could
true.
get that way if it got excessive.
Right.
But generally, I think women aren't like that.